My name is Randall Kennedy. I teach here at Harvard Law School, and I have the distinct pleasure and honor of being in conversation with Albie Sachs. Albie Sachs is one of the great people and an extraordinary jurist. We're going to learn, I'm going to ask some questions because one of the things I want to do is make sure that people have some sense of your career, Justice Sachs, but I'll just say at the outset, a very large part of Albie Sachs's life was spent being a revolutionary. It's part of the anti-apartheid struggle. And then more recently, another part of his life is as a justice on the Constitutional Court of South Africa. That's quite a range. And I'll just say personally that it really is an honor to be with you. I guess I had just recently come to the law school here, and I read in the newspaper that you were going to be traveling with a delegation with the African National Congress in New York, and that you were going to be part of something at the Ford Foundation. And I wrangled a ticket, so to speak, because frankly, I just wanted to, see what you looked like and sounded like, and because I'd read about you, and again, it's a real honor. Well, let's get going because we don't have that much time. And what I'd like to do was first, with a couple of questions, to get sort of again the trajectory of your career. Let's start with 1952. In 1952, you are 17 years old, and you are a second-year law student, and you engage in what you call your first serious political act. That was an act having to do with the Defiance of Unjust Laws campaign. Take it away. What happened in 1952?
I've got a new title for you, Wrangling Randall. Yeah, I was a second year, 17-year-old law student. And 1952 was the tercentenary of the landing of a certain Dutch commander called Jan van Riebeeck planting the flag in what's now Cape Town. Mm-hmm. And we were told that's when South African history started. And the aeroplanes are flying overhead, the armored cars through the streets, and there are about 200 of us in a small town hall, 190 black people, 10 white people, and we're singing, my boye, my boye, my boye, come back Africa, Senzenina, Senze, what have we done? And suddenly it's Dr. Morocco, Dr. Dadu, JB Box, Katani Leba Papi, volunteers obey the orders, be ready for the action now. And the volunteers are being called for. And I say to my friend, I want to volunteer. He says, you can't. Why? Because you're white. We're fighting racism. It's a black struggle led by black people, but I'll send your name forward. And 9 months later, I'm leading a group of 4 whites to sit down on benches in the post office marked non-whites only. So some people remember their first kiss. I remember the first time I went to jail. And that was after that. And then to my total consternation, the magistrate sees he's a 17-year-old, he's a juvenile. Are any of your parents in court? My mother stands up. He said, I'm sending you home to your mother. So I was sent home as a juvenile. And even that was my introduction. And I often mention that experience because I was volunteer number 8,942, and volunteer number 1 was a certain Nelson Mandela. He wasn't well known in those days. He was an attorney, the only black firm of attorneys, Mandela and Tambo, and he was willing to give up. He couldn't vote. He had to show his documents to the police on demand, He was forced to even have their offices in an area designated for blacks, but he could make some money. He's willing to give all of that up for his people. So that was my introduction then. And I ask people sometimes, what is the one good thing apartheid did? I don't know if anybody ever says, what is the one good thing slavery did, or the benefits indirect of slavery? It's a horrible kind of question. And the only good thing apartheid did, it created anti-apartheid. And that's how Albie Sachs in Cape Town came to link up with Nelson Mandela in Johannesburg. And that was my launching into political activity.
Okay. I want to go to another date, 1963, because what you just said was you were arrested, but you didn't go to jail. In 1963, you were arrested and you did go to jail. Not only did you go to jail, but you were put into solitary confinement. This is very much on my mind because I have this book that I read a long time ago, but the jail diary of Albie Sachs, and it talks about you being in solitary confinement. First of all, why were you arrested in 1963 and why were you put in solitary confinement?
Right. So I was just for a few hours in jail in 1952. So I can say my first kiss, my first jail appearance was a very benign one. The second one was hell. It was, you could be picked up by any police officer of a certain rank if he had suspicion that you had information relevant to subversion, anti-government activities. No charge, uh, no appearing in court, no contact with family, total isolation. And we, in the struggle, we know we're going to go to jail. My youth movement, we all went to jail. Dennis Goldberg went for 22 years, Ben Turok for 5 years, Toivo Yatoivo for 10 years. And now I'm finding myself in jail. And you read books, they don't prepare you. Nothing can prepare you for the hell of isolation. Human beings are made to be with other human beings. And you just go on day after day after day. In the end, you don't know why you're there. The freedom, justice, far away. Some little thing inside was hanging in, refusing to answer questions. The only thing I was sure of was of being in prison, not for being bad, but for being good. That was clear all the way through. And all over the world, sadly, there are people who are in prison not for being bad, but for being good, because the society is wicked. After 90 days, it was a 90-day law, they give me back my tie, they give me back my shoelaces, they give me back my watch. They say, you're free, am I free? And before I can reach the street, I'm placed in another 90-day detention. And our wonderful top court in those days said 90 days, you can be released for 3 days, and another 90 days. So the court was conniving at the suppression at that time. I go back to prison, they take my tie away, my watch, and another 78 days I'm there. Towards the end, they bring my mother to see me, and they think that she's going to say, look, Albie, you know, you've been in prison for a long time and you must come home and so on. And my mom says she had her hair done, she bought a dress specially, and she's never worn it again, she said after that. She came in and I'm speaking to her, Mommy, and she just puts a finger to her lips. I got it from my mother. They were activists, my mother and my dad in their day. And I was released, I ran to the sea. Further than I'd ever run in my life. I threw myself into the water and I looked joyous, but something inside me was a little bit broken. You never get over solitary confinement.
Why was the government detaining you? What were you doing as a lawyer that prompted the government to detain you?
No, it wasn't simply the people I was defending. I refused to answer their questions, and I'm going to refuse to answer your question. I was in the resistance, but I had like a game with them. I said, what are the questions you want to put to me? And they said, no, we're not going to tell you what the questions are. unless you agree to answer the questions. I'm not going to answer their questions. Uh, and to this day, I don't know. They picked me up without charge. They released me without explanation. But I don't claim to be somebody who's just a lawyer defending people now being picked on for that. I think some of them hated me because I cross-examined them, called them liars and so on in their witness box. But I was part of the resistance.
In 1966, you are forced to leave South Africa. You were exiled.
Okay, you're leaving out the second detention, which I'm going to mention.
Oh, go ahead.
That was early 66. And now it's a much tougher team, down from Johannesburg, a famous Roy Swanepoel. Many people died under his interrogation, and now they're using sleep deprivation. I don't know what's going on. They just come in, they bang the table, shout for 10 minutes, noise, and 20 minutes silence. Then another half hour, 10 minutes, 20 minutes. And then they rotate. And it's going through the evening, through the night, into the morning. And something they gave me to eat, I think, undermined my resistance. And I toppled off the chair onto the floor. I just felt I'm breaking. Water being poured on me, eyes being pried open. I sit up and I keep going and I'm thinking, okay, I'm breaking, but I'm going to manage my breakdown. I'm going to try and control my breakdown. And eventually I indicate I'm willing to answer questions. And I feel totally furious and humiliated and defeated and broken, but not completely broken. I'm still controlling. And then they say, yeah, so interesting, the names you mentioned, they're all people who've left the country or dead, but we'll come back for you later. And now I'm sent back to an ordinary cell. They're intending to interrogate me down the line. And meanwhile, somebody else in the same conditions as myself had whispered something to his wife, had gone to court. And some of the judges in Cape Town were more open-minded and fair. And they put an interdict, an injunction against further interrogations to stop the sleep deprivation. That saved me. That saved me. Mm-hmm. So many of our people broke. And I met Huey Newton in Oakland years later, and he was speaking about the whole, that you never get over solitary. I met a senator from Italy who'd been imprisoned by Mussolini. He said, you never get over solitary. You know, I look back on my life, if I can just ad-lib now a little bit, I can't believe my own life. I'm a nice, quiet guy. I would break up fights at school. I wasn't a troublemaker. I'm soft, I'm gentle, I'm romantic. I live in the world of books and dreams and so on. I was just in the wrong place at the right time, or the right place at the wrong time. And that's what happened to decent people who took a stand. And people say to me, Albie, look, you lost an arm. Were you coming to that?
Yes. 1988.
Okay, so now I've been 11 years in England. Mozambique becomes independent. A wonderful fight against Portuguese colonialism. And it's revolutionary Mozambique. And I'm there. And I still remember in England, I met great people. They're doing terrific anti-apartheid work, wonderful friends. I got a PhD at Sussex University. I had books published. I'm on BBC. But something inside me is kind of defeated. And we'd have our weekly, monthly ANC meetings, and usually a Labour Party town hall, and we sing Kosi Sekulele Africa, and everybody's right arms. I had a right arm then goes up, and this stupid damn arm wouldn't go up. Everybody else is just automatically. I go to Mozambique on the second day. There's a huge meeting, 60,000 people, the football stadium. Samora Machel, who'd been the leader of the armed resistance, come, there's Samora, and he gives a viva. Viva o povo unido de Rebuma Maputo. Anybody speak Portuguese here? Spanish? Okay, long live the people united from the Rovuma to Maputo, and 60,000 arms went up into the air, including this stupid damn arm. So I got my courage back in Mozambique, and I went up with the revolution, and I came down with the revolution. No scope for opposition. I became a convert to multi-party democracy there. But it was a tremendous, tremendous experience for me. 1988 now, I've already been there since 77. And it's the day of the Mozambican woman, public holiday. I'm going to the beach, and something terrible is happening to me. I don't know what it is. I'm in total, total, total darkness. And I hear a voice saying, Albie, this is Eva Garrido. You're in Maputo Central Hospital. Your arm is in lamentable condition. You must face the future with courage. And I said into the darkness, what happened? And a woman's voice said it was a car bomb. And I faint back into the darkness, but with a sense of joy. They tried to kill me. That failed. That day you're waiting for, you're in the struggle. You don't think consciously, but will they come for me? Will they come for me today or tonight, tomorrow? Will I be brave? And they'd come for me and they'd try to kill me and they'd failed. Now, nobody believes me. I was speaking to my grandchild a couple of weeks ago, and I said, Luatlo, it was the happiest day of my life. He said, but Grandpa, you lost your arm. I said, but I only lost an arm, and they tried to kill me. And I had a total conviction as I got better, my country would get better. And it proved to be right. That's why I'm so damn optimistic. Not even only about South Africa, but about another country where all my friends are suffering such dismay and discombobulation and so on. And I have that sense of inner brightness and strength. And it's based not simply on stubbornness. Of course it's stubborn, but it's based on we've accomplished so much that seemed impossible. And people in this other country, the name of which I'm not going to mention, have accomplished so much. The rights have been hard won. They weren't gifted so that it can be taken away easily. And I have no doubt that those rights will be reaffirmed. I was cheeky enough, insolent enough, if you like, in relation to fate, to feel that I'd got through that amazing day triumphantly. I actually told myself a joke. Lots of us who Jews wonder what the hell your Jewishness means in these days with it's been spoken about in so many different ways. Well, for me, humor is part and parcel of my Jewishness that I'm not going to let go of. And I'm lying, feeling very light. My eyes are covered. And I tell myself the joke about Jaime Cohn, like me, he's a Jew, falls off a bus. Some of you might know it. And he does what looks like the sign of the cross. And someone says, Jaime, I didn't know you were Catholic. What do you mean Catholic? Spectacles, testicles, wallet, and watch. And for some reason, I started with testicles. And the word, I've tried all my life to be macho. I was macho for more than 15 minutes. The word went round the ANC camps, and the first thing Comrade Albie did was reach for his balls. In order. Wallet, my heart's okay. I'm feeling my head. There's a kind of crater there, but the brain's not affected. And watch, I've lost an arm. I've only lost an arm. But from then onwards, Randall, it wasn't only that. I learned to sit up. I learned to use what's called a commode. I shit, therefore I am. I joke, therefore I am. I learned to stand. And each time it was like a sense of joyous rejuvenation, rebirth. And it was showing them, it was giving the finger to the people who tried to kill me.
Who were the people who tried to kill you? Have you found that out?
Yes. The guy who organized the bomb in my car went to our Truth Commission, and he came to see me before to acknowledge what he'd done to get amnesty. he'd phoned me. I went to the security gate, opened it, my heart's beating. Here's a guy, he tried to kill me, and I'm looking at him. He's young, tall and thin like me, younger than me. And I see in his eyes, so this is the man I tried to kill. And he sees in my eyes as the man who tried to kill me. We didn't know each other. We'd never fought over money or love or power, but he was on that side, I was on this side. And we walked to my chambers, and he's striding like a soldier, and I try and slow him down with the judge's ambulation. Men find extraordinary situations to compete with other men. And we talk, and he tells me good family and good at university. And he's so proud that he rose in the ranks in the army. He's telling me with pride to become a senior person in the hit squad. It's like weird, but naive. And then he describes the operation. He said it's postponed, and he realized that he'd organized it and so on. And at the end, I said, Henry, normally when I say goodbye to someone, I shake that person's hand. I can't shake your hand. But go to the Truth Commission, maybe we'll meet one day. I forget about him. And about 9 months later, I'm going to a party. The band's playing loud. It's the end of year. And I'm with a friend. She'd invited me there. And I hear a voice saying, Albie. It's Henry. He's calling me Albie. Even you don't call me Albie, Professor Sachs. And he said, I went to the Truth Commission and I spoke to Bobby and Sue and Farouk. I told them everything I knew. They were people also in exile with me, could have been victims of the bomb. And you said one day, and I said, Henry, I've only got your face to tell me if what you're saying is the truth. And I put out my hand and I shook his hand. I almost fainted. He went away beaming. But I heard afterwards, he suddenly went home and he cried for 2 weeks. I don't know if that story is true. I want to believe it's true. I'm not even checking on it in case it's not true. It's more important that this guy went home and cried, discovering his humanity, than that he goes to jail. Meanwhile, when I'm recovering in London afterwards, I get a note from a letter. You'll remember letters. I used to lick the stamps and the envelopes, and I'm opening with my one hand. And it says, don't worry, Comrade Albie, we will avenge you. I think, avenge me? We're going to cut off the arm. We're going to blind in one eye. Is that the country we want? If we get democracy, if we get freedom, if we get justice for all, the rule of law, that will be my soft vengeance. Roses and lilies will grow out of my arm. And that theme of soft vengeance became the theme of my life, going back and helping to write the country's constitution. How many of you guys are going to help write your country's constitution? None of you. None of you. You seeing a guy who did it? Way. Somebody said you like Washington and Madison and Lincoln and the civil rights people, Martin Luther King, all like wrapped up in one generation.
I want to get to that because it's so, in 1988, you are the victim of car bombing. But in 1990, just 2 years later, you go back to South Africa and help create a new constitutional, new regime. And you were part of the creation of the Constitution for the democratic South Africa. And by the way, we have a great audience. I'm going to ask 2 more questions, and then we're going to get questions from here. But here's one.
Yeah.
In your work on the Constitution, if you just had to choose one one thing that you one idea that you put in there, what would be the thing that, was most gratifying to you that you did with the work on the South African Constitution?
Okay, it's not something that I, Albie, did. The 11 of us on the court did. We declared on the Constitutional Court, members of the Constitutional Court appointed by Mandela, after a long process, Judicial Service Commission and so on, we declared the Constitution of South Africa to be unconstitutional. That's never happened in history. And it all came about through a two-stage process we had of constitution making. When we're meeting now, I'm now with the Black Liberation Movement side. We've got justice on our side. We've got the world's thinking about apartheid on our side. They've got the guns. They're in power. They're in control. And they're not going to give up the guns. They say, if we hand over the guns, you're going to do to us what we've done to you. And they say, what we have to have is power sharing between racial groups. We would have had 3 presidents, Mandela on Monday, de Klerk on Tuesday, Buthelezi on Wednesday, ruling by consensus. It would have been a disaster. We wanted simply majority rule democracy. That was the weird thing. The whites claiming to be the Democrats, saying black people must live in tribal homelands, and the black people saying, we're human beings, we want democracy, and the whites refusing democracy. So what will persuade them to lay down their guns? A two-stage process of constitution making. We would agree to certain core principles in advance. Separation of powers, independent judiciary, Bill of Rights, devolution, a whole range of things. I thought it would be just 5, enough to get on my 5 fingers. We ended up with 34 with sub-principles, each one hard, bitterly negotiated. They are agreed to in advance. We'll have democratic elections, and the first democratically elected parliament will draft the constitution in keeping with those principles. And they spent 2 years. They were given 2 years. There was singing in parliament. Thabo Mbeki made a brilliant speech, Today I Am an African, with a very wonderful broad definition. People were singing. And then they sent the text to the Constitutional Court to certify whether or not the principles had been agreed to in advance. And we spent 10 days writing almost an encyclopedia of constitutional law, 70 objections from the public. We heard all of them. And eventually we decided overwhelmingly the principles had been complied with. But in 10 respects, it fell short. So we declared the Constitution to be unconstitutional, sent it back. They made the corrections. But it meant, first of all, the Constitutional Court had enormous prestige and respect because it showed we were willing to stand up to government if necessary, even although most of us had come from the ranks of the freedom fighters. Now our gift to the nation was the Constitution, and the text had to be right. Yeah, so that's a moment that stands out, yeah.
Last question from me, at least for now. You're a white man and white lawyer, and you were part of a freedom struggle, a revolutionary struggle that was composed mainly of black people. Mm-hmm. You were, a founding father of a new republic, majority black. In your years, both as a law, as an activist, as a lawyer, as a judge in South Africa, how much did you think about the fact that you were white in a setting in which many of your comrades were black? How much did you think about it? Did you have strategies to try to, deal with problems that might arise? And were there problems that arose?
There were no core interior problems in the sense of, I grew up in a revolutionary family. My mother would say to me and my little brother, I'm age 4 and he's age 2, tidy up, Uncle Moses is coming. And Uncle Moses wasn't Moses Cohen or Moses Cantor, it was Moses Kotani. And he was the General Secretary of the Communist Party of South Africa. And my mother was what was called his typist. So I grew up in a family where my mother, a white woman, had enormous respect and admiration for Moses Kotane. He used to say, Ray taught me to read and write in a night school, and now I'm her boss. As a kind of a joke. But that was the world I grew up in. That was the natural world. It made me different, made me and my brother different from most of our peers. But it was a difference that we felt was an exalting difference. It wasn't a shameful kind of difference. So that was my initial things. I hated my parents assuming that I would follow in their footsteps. My dad was general secretary of the Garment Workers Union, where that had workers of all different backgrounds. So only when I met young people my age at university with the same ideas, then I was ready. And that's when I got into the struggle. So there was no inherent problem. The second aspect that was so valuable was I gained so much from being in the struggle. I would go to a public meeting and soprano would start singing and the bass would come in and then the tenors and the alt four-part. I don't know if it's the same in the US. Four-part harmony, black community, still? Mm-hmm. Which is your voice?
I don't know.
Okay. We won't test your voice.
Please don't.
But it was somehow different, that the sense of community, of solidarity, of connection, poor people with very, very little, maybe one change of clothing, big dreams, and the singing, that kind of emotion of humanity and different kind of laughter. I mean, we whites are tight and narrow and self-centered. I'm saying that all over the world. And so I'm finding it beneficial. You know, I'm gaining something. I'm connecting with my fellow human beings in ways that apartheid didn't allow me to do. So it's a vastly enriching experience. It wasn't like, I'm a white person, I've got to be careful. Then one day they say, Comrade Albie, you must speak now. And I say, I can't speak. I don't live the lives of the people, it's working class and poor. How can I? He's saying to me, we speak about non-racism. It's just an idea. They must see you. They must hear you. So I go up onto the platform, which is actually a lorry, a truck. And then we're very worried about nuclear warfare. And I make some comment about the arms race and only benefits the capitalists who sell the arms, and you've got to avoid destruction. One sentence, and the interpreter speaks and everybody laughs. And I say, Comrade Archie, why did everybody laugh? What did you say? He says to me, Comrade Albie, you speak against war. Our people want war. They think if war comes, it'll bring down the white domination. So what I explained to them was, if we have war, the Russians will send a bomb to kill the prime minister, who's Dr. Milan. It'll blow him up. It'll blow you all up as well. And that's when everybody laughed. So it was like very educative for me to see the world from the point of view of what we call the masses, and to discover the intense humanity. And people had a kind of love for me, so that it used to worry me when I'm tortured, I'm not given electric shock because I'm white. You know, even white privilege in a way, even when you're being tortured, sort of follows me. When I'm blown up, the New York Times carries a wonderful story, broken but unbroken. But if it had been you, they wouldn't have carried that story. Then I'm saying, well, okay, Albie, if you can be an ambassador for others whose stories are not told, it helps the anti-apartheid movement, because the readers can identify with a white lawyer in a way that they couldn't do with a black law professor. Then somebody told me that his partner in exile supported the Pan-Africanist Congress that was against working with white people, people of mixed descent, called colored people in South Africa, and Indians. And I showed her your diary, and she agreed to marry me. So in a sense, there were not many of us whites in the struggle, but the fact that we were in the struggle And at that stage, before I was blown up, but we were going to jail, we were writing about it, had a disproportionate effect. And when I was blown up afterwards, the same kind of a thing. There's a certain sadness in me that my body counted for more, but also a certain, well, those are the paradoxes of history, that it's not something I sought or wanted or welcomed, but in a way, the contribution I made was disproportionately great because it was illustrating a principle of we're fighting a system, not a race. It was so vital. And fighting a system means there were black people on the other side in the system. And there were white people on our side. And it enabled us looking to the future. And I'll just end with this. When I came back after 24 years of exile, and I'm in Cape Town at the airport, and Comrade Albie, where do you want to go now? Could I go to my mother living in a white area? Could I go to Dalan Farida Omar in an area reserved for people of Indian origin? Or should I go to Gogoletu, where Bulalang Nuka lived? And it's not saying where do you want to go, it's saying who are you? And I felt then I couldn't go to a white area. I'll spend time with my mom, she's my mom. But I couldn't be a rebel in a white area. I identified so much with the people in struggle emotionally. And the second time, third, fourth, it took about 6 journeys to London and back before I could just relax and say, okay, I grew up near the sea, it's a beautiful place, I can go there now. So for me, being in what became a non-racial, anti-white supremacy movement was a long process. It was enormously enriching for me. It wasn't having to submit myself or, and in addition to meeting Mandela, I worked in exile with his law partner, Oliver Tambo, who is equally, is not known. Mandela is known internationally. And one of the reasons I adore Mandela was he helped the world to change the notion of the civilized human being. When I grew up, the civilized human being was a man who spoke English, who was stern in manner, had a neat crease in his trousers, ate with a knife and fork, and had to be white. And now suddenly the civilized human being, who's the epitome of human beauty, is a black person who is thoughtful, who's proud, who's gracious, who's embracing, who can speak to the whole world. And Mandela, although he's criticized by a lot of young black people in South Africa today, will always have that. But it wasn't like he was our leader who led us to freedom. He was our public face of a big movement that spanned generations and a vast collective and millions of people participating on the ground, underground, internationally in different ways. And he did it with a special style and grace, but he wasn't all that influential. And I promised to end, I'm going to end my ending now. The only contribution he made to the text of our Constitution, proposal he made, we rejected. He wanted children of 17, 16, 17 to vote. And I was sent by the Constitutional Committee to argue with him 3 times. And the third time he said, oh, well, I'll sign on to it. History will prove that I was right. 10 years later, he gave that as an example of a president can be wrong. So far from influencing the text of the Constitution, he helped preside, he helped give a sense of stateliness, of what I call organized calm, principled, rooted calm in which negotiations could take place. Oliver Tambo was the genius in terms of the concept, and he worked with somebody called Paulo Jordan, whose father had been the first black professor at the University of Cape Town. Paulo, revolutionary, spent a lot of time in the US in the 70s and 80s, and he came up with the idea of South Africa needs majority rule with a Bill of Rights, no power sharing. And that became foundational to our whole constitutional project.
Questions? Comments? Yes. Dean Minow.
Sachs, law was such a tool of apartheid. And when you had the chance to help write the Constitution and be a justice, what did it take to make law not carry the odor of oppression?
Okay, let me take a few questions.
So, what about that one? You want me to repeat it?
No, I got it. My answers tend to be long, so let me give one long answer to 3 questions.
Okay, so another question. Yes. Yes.
Hi, Justice Sachs. My name is Wei An Tai. I'm from Taiwan, and I'm an SJD student here. A few years back, when you visited Taiwan, you mentioned that the one thing that you'll always bring with you, even if you're stranded on an island, is the proportionality principle. I wonder, given what's happened, do you have an update to that question? Like, given what's happening, democratic backsliding, polarization, or the many threats that we're facing today, do you have an update to that question, to that answer?
Sorry, I couldn't get that.
The question was what the proportionality principle.
So you
Apparently,
said,
at some point earlier, you talked about the importance of the proportionality principle. Do you still hold by that, given what's happening in so many democracies?
Got
around the world?
it.
Third question. Yes, right here.
Hi, Justice Sachs. I'm Emma. I'm an LLM student from South Africa and grown up very inspired by the work that you've done. So thank you for all of that. One thing that I'm very interested in South Africa, the dialogue around our constitution, is that it's this transformative document that is meant to change society from this deeply unjust one to one where there's equality and freedoms. And I was wondering if you would share your reflections on the value and role of our constitution 30 years into democracy.
Didn't get it.
The question was, well, first of all, fellow South African.
Yes, yeah, I heard that.
And who admires your constitution in part because it's a transformational constitution that seeks to transform society. Is that okay?
30 years later, does it still hold the same value?
Yeah, okay.
Here's another one. Yep. Here we go.
I'm wondering, I know it's, South Africa came a long way when last year led the ICC case against Israel's genocide in Gaza, and I was wondering if you could talk about that, any reflections? Yeah.
Reflections on the ICJ case. Later.
One more here.
Hi, Justice Sachs. Another South African in the room. But I was wondering, what, in your experience, is the role for lawyers and just judges in lowering political violence and the temperature of a society that is increasingly normalizing violence for political ends? And to what role can we play in creating a societal recognition of each other's humanity?
Just then, repeat.
What role can lawyers play in lowering the incidence of political violence in our societies? Is that okay?
Yeah.
And since we're on a roll, I'm going to throw in another one. You undoubtedly know, because you referred to it a little bit in your remarks, you undoubtedly know that there are some South Africans who, looking back, they respect you and your fellow founders, but also they're not uncritical. And there's some that think that you all did not push enough, that you all weren't radical enough. And what do you say to them? That's enough. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. Okay. Yeah, so some of these questions cluster. People often ask me, Albie, you lost an arm, sight of an eye, you were in prison, all the rest. Look at South Africa today. Unemployment, racism, inequality, violence. Is this the country you were fighting for? And I pause. And I say, yes, this is the country I was fighting for, but it's not the society I was fighting for. We got a country. We didn't have a country. We had a land with black people and white people and different population groups. We didn't have a country. We got a country, South Africa, with elections, democracy implanted, elections that matter. If the governing party loses, they step down. If the president has had 2 terms, steps down. In fact, no president has actually had the full 2 terms. We have a very lively press. We have a strong independent judiciary, strong civil society. So we're not a fair society, and we're not a safe society, but we're a very open society. And in a sense, that's what we fought for people to have rights, to have the vote, to have the opportunities to hold government accountable. And from that point of view, it's a very, very vibrant country. And you can ask questions hard as you like. You can speak to a taxi driver. You can speak to anybody. People speak their minds in South Africa. And I'm very proud of that fact. And the people speak about my sacrifice. And for me, it wasn't a sacrifice. I was a volunteer. I wasn't oppressed. I joined the struggle knowing these were the dangers. These were the hardships. This came part and parcel of your life's endeavor. And the fact that I survived was triumphant for me. It wasn't a horrible thing that happened to me. And the sacrifice would have been to do nothing, to just make money, get a big car, to travel, maybe aim to get a yacht or sail around the world, whatever. That would have been a sacrifice. I would have been sacrificing my dreams, my sense of humanity, my contact with other people. And it's been an amazing life that I've had, a wonderful life, with a few bumps along the way, but the bumps are part of that amazing life. And the key thing, now I'm being asked a lot now to kind of summarize some ideas that you end up with after all this time. And the key theme that runs right through my life is turning the negative into positive. And I believe that's going to be very important for this country in the coming period. So I'm in solitary confinement. I'm going through hell. I'm almost collapsing. And then I think I'm going to write a book. I'd actually read Simone de Beauvoir just before then, and she spoke about you write a book to connect the dots of life, to make sense of what otherwise would be chaos. And the minute I'm thinking of writing a book, anything that happens to me now becomes rich and valuable. It's going to be in the book. And I come out with a book afterwards, and Jay, I'm a writer. And this book comes out, the Diary of Albie Sachs, woohoo. So it's a source of joy comes from the horror. When I'm blown up afterwards, I write another book, The Soft Vengeance of a Freedom Fighter. But that theme of soft vengeance then becomes a theme of my life. You don't do to them what they've done to you. Then you're at the same level as them, only you're more powerful. It's transcendent. And we got it. We got a constitution. That's the great gift of my generation, was the Constitution. And if you study the text of the Constitution, it's a constitution for transformation. And we owe it to an American scholar called Carl Clare. Carl and Clare from Northeastern and Frank Michelman from Harvard were the two who didn't come to tell us what we should do in South Africa. It was wonderful getting American experience. Cass Sunstein came, spoke brilliantly, and others came and so on. But they came to study what we were doing. And Carl came up with this idea of transformational constitution. It's not a revolution. A revolution destroys, turns upside down, reconstructs everything. It's very, very dramatic and powerful, but it's chaotic and lots of lives can be lost. But it's not just little ameliorations. It's stronger than affirmative action. It's transformational. And we see, yes, that's right. And our constitution, through social and economic rights, through non-racism and non-sexism, even through the clause dealing with land and property, opens the door or creates the doorway for transformation and change. And so when about a month before our first democratic elections, I'm feeling very uneasy. And sometimes my body knows something before my mind understands. And then my mind is telling me, there are 4 members of the National Executive of the ANC who are lawyers. There's going to be 1 Minister of Justice. Is the phone going to ring for Zola Skweyiya or Dalla Omar or Kada Asmal or Albie Sachs? And I think I haven't spent my life wondering, is the phone going to ring? I'm getting out of politics. I'm stepping down. If I can be a judge on the Constitutional Court, fine, I'm getting out of law. I've tried 5 times to get out of law. I've failed. So I've given up even trying to get out of law at the age of 90. And I took a decision then. I'm not going to be part of the political game. If I get onto the court, that's great. I got onto the court. It kept me in a bubble. Now we're continuing with the dream, if you like, with the goal, with the beautiful ideas shaped in constitutional forms of law now not being an instrument of domination and control and suppression and division, but law very much based on values. The whole first third of our Constitution is values. The value system comes first. Non-racism, non-sexism, supremacy of the Constitution, very expansive Bill of Rights, certain fundamental features of our Constitution are there. And that's kept me in that trajectory of applying those values as much as we can from the position of the court. So I in technical terms, we found the Bill of Rights sets out a number of rights, I think something like 25. The rights can be limited by a law of general application that would be justifiable in an open democratic society, and proportionality becomes the name of the game. It's weighing up the public interest in the law that's passed, protects a broad public interest, against the rights of individuals, of ordinary persons. Everywhere in the world, top courts are dealing with proportionality, not in the US of A. Here, everything is classification. Is it a protected right or not a protected right? In any event, that's the way we went. And it's so axiomatic now, I don't even defend it. I just refer to it. That's the way we work, and constitutional courts in Japan and Taiwan and Mexico and France all use the theme of proportionality. The ICJ case, I felt so proud when that case was brought. The first presenter was Adila Hassan. She'd been a law clerk in our court. And she spoke for the great majority of South Africans that something awful was happening in front of our eyes. Those huge bombs raining down on people to kill one. I don't even want to get into the details, the naming and so on. It's okay if you kill 200. This just can't be, it can't be right, it can't be right. And the one thing we're good at in South Africa is shaping the law to meet hard, intense situations in a way that's principled and honorable. And the fact that Adela was presenting with such poise was a source of real pride to me. The third presenter was Tembeka Ngqoketobe. And I don't like to believe some people are born with enormous gifts and others are born dumb. But he came from a very poor rural family, and he's just got that something, you know, that a good lawyer has, a sharpness. Even lawyers you disagree with, you know, in terms of outcome and reasoning, they've got that knack of argumentation and presentation. And then he dealt with that as well. He'd also been a law clerk with our Chief Justice. And so I totally supported the outcome. I happen to be a great personal friend of Aaron Barak, who wrote a dissenting judgment. And I read his judgment with great care. And I see where he comes from. I don't share the outlook. I don't share the Mark of Cain image that he uses, transferring it. But I respect the thoughtfulness, and at least he showed some concern for the terrible loss of life. He expressed it in the judgment. And I might say, for millions and millions of South Africans, bringing that case was seen as a continuation of our struggle, the struggle for justice, the struggle for fairness. It had a marvelous effect generally in our society. I think I've got here something about lawyers loving the institution. Do I still love the institution? Am I in love with myself? Yes. No, it was an extraordinary life.
I want to intervene here, and I simply want to say, yes, it has been an extraordinary life, and it continues, and you have graced us with the continuation of your life, and I know for me, I am deeply, deeply grateful. Thank you very much.